Okay, today's lesson is going to be over prokaryotic and eukaryotic cells. So that's our objective for today, as well as introducing the term cell organelle, which we'll do at the very end of the lesson. The first thing you're going to need is you're going to need your notes page that looks like this. And before we begin with the information, I want you to just read through the 5 statements there on the anticipation guide and circle whether you believe that those statements are true or false. So I'll give you a few minutes. You might want to pause the video to do that. And then we're just going to review real quick what a cell is. So we learned when we talked about the levels of organization that the cell is the smallest living thing. For a long time, people didn't know about cells because you can't see the cells without the aid of a microscope. So until the microscope was invented, people didn't know about cells. Once they learned about cells, they kind of took everything that they knew or believed about cells and condensed it into cell theory, which we've also learned about. Cell theory says 3 things. Number 1, just that all living things are made of cells. The cell is the smallest living thing. Number 2, the cell is a basic unit of structure. They're kind of like the building blocks of all living things. And the third one is new cells are made from existing cells. So there used to kind of be a belief before we knew about cells and could see them with microscopes that cells, just living things, just spontaneously generated, that maggots that were on rotten meat just spontaneously came out of the meat. And then once we knew that there were these small microscopic living cells, scientists realized no, they're not just magically coming out, spontaneously generating from something non-living. Living things always come from other living things. Now, since we've talked about cells, now we're going to learn about the 2 kinds of cells. And the 2 kinds of cells are going to be prokaryotic and eukaryotic cells. So you can see on your notes page, you've got your notes divided into those 2 sections with prokaryotic and eukaryotic. So we're going to take notes on prokaryotic on the left, eukaryotic will be on the right. And the prokaryotic and eukaryotic cells, there's some basic structural differences between those 2 types of cells. Prokaryotes, which are prokaryotic cells, are going to include bacteria. And so those are single-celled organisms. We'll talk about bacteria a little bit more here in just a few minutes. Eukaryotic cells, or eukaryotes, include 2 types of cells, animal cells and plant cells. And that's what we're really going to be focusing on, is the animal and plant cells. So here's a picture that shows you the difference between a prokaryotic cell and a eukaryotic cell. So go ahead and pause the video, take a few minutes, and on your notes page, jot down 3 differences that you can see, because we said there's some distinct structural differences between the 2 kinds of cells. Jot down at least 3 differences that you can see from this diagram. So just pause it and then start again. One of the things that you probably noticed is this one here, the prokaryotic cell, is a lot smaller than a eukaryotic cell. This is measuring the average diameter. These are micrometers. And this is measuring the average diameter for an eukaryotic cell. So you can see it's larger. Another difference is this one, the eukaryotic, has a nucleus. Notice there's no nucleus on the prokaryotic cell. There's a nucleoid region, but not a distinct nucleus. So that's going to be a super important difference between the 2 cells. Another thing that students often notice is that this eukaryotic cell has a lot more things in it. There's a lot more structures inside the cell than in the prokaryotic cell. And also, a lot of times students will mention this one has all these little things sticking off. These are called cilia, which help the cell move, and flagella also help the cell move. Now, while that's a difference on this particular picture, eukaryotic cells can also have flagella and can also have cilia. There's even cells in your body that have cilia to help them move things throughout your body, and we have cells that have flagella to help them move as well. The main difference, though, is that a prokaryotic cell is a single-celled organism that does not have a nucleus. That's the big difference between a prokaryotic cell and a eukaryotic cell. And the traits of a prokaryotic cell that you can record in your notes are: 1, again, most important, they do not have a nucleus. They have genetic material, they have DNA, but it is not contained in a little structure. It's not bound into a membrane-bound structure called the nucleus. They do have some organelles. If you go back and look at that picture, there are some ribosomes in there, but compared to the eukaryotic cell, they don't have nearly as many. And because of that, they're a lot less complicated. They're less complex than eukaryotic cells. They're not able to form into a multi-celled organism. So prokaryotic cells are always going to be single-celled. They're never going to be multi-celled organisms from these types of cells. The best example are bacteria. Bacteria are prokaryotic. And while we might think of bacteria as unimportant, we kind of need to know about them because bacteria are small, but they can be very powerful. During the 14th century, the Black Death during the bubonic plague, that was actually caused by bacteria that was spread through fleas that were on rodents that then passed to people, and about a quarter of the population died from that plague. So even though they're small, they can be very dangerous. Also, they can be very helpful. Bacteria help to decompose material. We have good bacteria in our digestive system that are going to help break down the food that we eat. Bacteria is used in making certain products like cheese or yogurt. So there are also good bacteria. If you've ever seen advertisement for probiotics, that's trying to put good bacteria back into your digestive system, or commercials for certain kinds of yogurt that have good bacteria to put that back into your digestive system. So while bacteria can be very bad, they also can be very good. Our next kind of cell is the eukaryotic cell, and a eukaryotic cell is a more complex cell that has a nucleus and it has more organelles. We talked about that being a difference between the two pictures. Their traits that you can record in your notes are: they have a nucleus. The DNA is contained in a membrane-bound structure called the nucleus. They have more organelles that are going to work together. They're like little structures, little organs inside the cell that help it to function. Here's an example of some of those organelles that we're going to be learning about later. Ribosomes, endoplasmic reticulum, mitochondria are just a few. And then the other traits of eukaryotic cells for you to be aware of are: they're more complex than prokaryotic. They can be single-celled organisms, or these types of cells can work together to form multi-cell types of organisms. So when you're looking at plants, animals, fungi, protists, all of those are going to be made up of eukaryotic cells. So here's some pictures of those. So all of these have a cell, between a cell in their, a nucleus in their cell. Even this single-celled amoeba here, this organism, and notice that it does have a flagella just like the prokaryotic cell to help it move, has a nucleus. If it has a nucleus, it's eukaryotic. No nucleus, it's going to fall into the prokaryotic category. So our last question is, what do you think is the main difference between a prokaryotic cell and a eukaryotic cell? Well, the most important difference is the nucleus. Prokaryotic, again, do not have a nucleus that contains their DNA, and eukaryotic does. Because of that, eukaryotic cells can work together to form multi-celled organisms and perform more complex functions. Okay. At the bottom of your chart, there's a little blank box. That's a place for you to draw a sketch of the prokaryotic and eukaryotic cell. So you might want to go back into the screencast, find the picture of the prokaryotic and eukaryotic cell, and just do a quick sketch there to complete your notes. The last thing is that we're just going to really quickly talk about what an organelle is, because that's our next lesson. Organelles are the little organs that are found inside a cell. So all of those little structures that we said, there's more of these in a eukaryotic cell, those are called organelles. And we're going to be learning the names and functions of the different organelles in our next lesson. The last thing that you need to do and have ready for tomorrow is going back and finishing up the anticipation guide. So now that you've learned about prokaryotic and eukaryotic cells, just going to go back and respond to the true-false statements at the top. Bring these notes back in tomorrow. We'll check them, go over them, and answer any questions that you might have.